Good stuff. Well, welcome to today's Fireside Chat. This is something which we do every 2 weeks, and the idea is to provoke a conversation and get ideas from the hive, so we're all contributing to the conversation. And so today, I wanted to just address some of the mood in the camp that Warren and I have kind of experienced with conversations we've had over the last few weeks, where people just seem to be a little bit lackluster, lacking enthusiasm or just overwhelmed. And so today's Fireside Chat is the grand topic of creating momentum in a time of apathy. And so just so we're on the same page, let's just look at some terms here. So apathy is lack of interest or enthusiasm or concern, according to the dictionary. And the way this manifests from what we've seen is certainly a decline in engagement on things like social media. I mean, many of you have joined rooms with us on Clubhouse, for example, and many of you have probably seen the numbers drop quite considerably, but it's not just Clubhouse. It's actually consistent through LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. So all engagement seems to be a little bit down right now. And it may also have manifested in a slower response to things like emails. So if you've got a prospect database and a newsletter that goes out, you might be witnessing right now lower open rates and certainly lower click-throughs. If you've got clients that you communicate regularly with via email, you might have also witnessed some lower response rates. So just taking a little bit longer to get back to you. And so we were talking about this over lunch and thought this would be a good topic, not only to kind of address what the issue is and at least understand the situation, but then maybe also think about some of the things that we can do to put it right or to be proactive within our own businesses. So that's essentially setting up for today. So I want to share a couple of stats with you. This is a stat from Trading Economics. I got this from the National Stats Office, basically showing consumer confidence. And the minuses, their particular scale, the minus is an improvement of -9, just to put it into context. And this is since July 2020. So what we can see is that consumer confidence is starting to improve as we're coming out of lockdown, which is a good positive sign. And just to give that a little bit of broader context, this is the stats over the last 20 years. So you can see the previous big dip was during the recession. And it took quite a long time to get out of that. But actually, I mean, if you look at just the bit between 2007, 2010, it probably mirrors what you're seeing from 2020 to 2021. It's almost a similar shape. So confidence is coming out. It might mean there's another dip to come if it's going to follow the same sort of recession pattern. But we are, from a consumer confidence, getting back on track. That's consumers. Let's have a look at business. And so from a business point of view, you can see we're actually into the positives. There is definitely confidence. And I got to give a caveat. These business stats include corporations, manufacturers. And so for the solopreneurs, the kind of thought leadership businesses, the one-man bands, which many of us are, it could be slightly skewed, and I want to touch on this in a short while. But we're seeing some positive reform, okay? And again, let's give that context over the last 20, 25 years. You can see it ebbs and flows, but at the lowest point during the pandemic was lower than the last recession. But the recovery, by all accounts, looks like it's quicker from a business confidence point of view. But this doesn't necessarily reflect small businesses, and certainly those in the B2B space. So if we've seen consumer confidence is up and manufacturing retail confidence is up, that's one aspect of business in the B2C. What does it look like in B2B? So according to the FSB, the UK Small Business Index confidence measure has risen to 27.3 in Q1 of 2021. That's up from -49 in the last quarter. The index is at its highest level since Q3 2014. And so again, there's maybe some optimism to take from that. We could be looking upwards. However, there is a challenge, right? And that is commonly 1 in 6 people in the last week have experienced some sort of common mental health problem. We've got some bigger experts on that topic than me in the panel today, so I'll be looking forward to their opinion and input for the conversation today. But that's 1 in 6 people generally. Actually, you know, if you were employed in the last year, whilst you've still had the same issues of isolation and everything else, you've still either been furloughed or had a salary. A lot of small business owners either didn't qualify for funding or simply didn't take it and just battened down the hatches. So there's been different, perhaps, considerations for the small business owner. And so I wanted to have a look at those stats particularly. Again, FSB is the source, but 21% of business owners feel anxious right now. This is small business owners. 17% feel stressed and 15% feel worried. Only 1 in 10 feel adequately supported. And so that's the mood in the camp for the small business marketplace. So if you are actually selling B2B, this is probably how your client or your prospect is feeling right now. And maybe there's a different type of duty of care. And we're going to touch on some of the things that we can do to show that we understand the plight of our marketplace. Because the main concerns for small business owners right now, they're worried that their customer base is going to stay online rather than coming into store from a retail perspective, but that's also true of other business services. You know, I've got friends who are in business centers, for example, and people just simply aren't working to returning to co-working spaces. They've got used to working from home. Customers adhering to social distancing is a worry, again, if you've got public space for your customers to come in. But even if you're a one-man band practitioner, you're still wanting to demonstrate that you're mindful of that. So it's a different anxiety again. They're worried when revenue will return to pre-pandemic levels. And according to the National Stats Office, right now, only about 50% of businesses believe that they are going to return to pre-pandemic levels in the next 6 months to 12 months. So, you know, it's going to take time, and most people are kind of accepting of that. They're worried about how long it's going to take to rebuild customer bases. In fact, you know, if your prospecting activity as a business owner was networking and getting out to events and maybe even speaking on stages, you've not necessarily had the opportunity to do that in the same way. And whilst the virtual presentation marketplace has taken off, you don't still get to build the rapport in the same way after the event, you know, off stage. You know, so there's lots and lots of different ways in which people have maybe struggled to fill their pipeline over the last 12 months. And maybe it's now that they're starting to really realize that. And then looking at one of the big anxieties around people, 1 in 7 businesses think they are likely to make some or all of their team redundant this quarter, which is why, again, government schemes like Kickstarter, if you haven't heard of it, it's basically a government supported scheme where they fund a member of staff for 6 months. The criteria is that that person needs to be on some sort of job seekers allowance and under 24 years old, I think. But ultimately, they'll be able to come in and work for you. They get some training as well as working for you for the several hours. And Warren and I are going through this process ourselves and bringing some young people on in order to get some skills for them and to give us some much needed support too as we grow. So these are just some of the considerations. Now, you know, the big question for today's topic is what can we do about it? And I'm going to throw a couple of quick ideas, but actually what we're really interested in is getting your perspective, understanding mood in the camp, but what you're doing to actually thrive in current times. So what can we do about it? Well, the first thing that I'd really like to mention is about controlling the controllables. So the things that are within your power. A very wise man once told me, don't worry about the things you have no control you know, over. But definitely control the controllables. And in this particular context, I mean, looking after yourself. Again, we've got bigger experts, which I'd love their opinion, like the James Granstroms, if he's in the lobby, or even around your own productivity. What is it you can be to be more productive? And again, I'm glad to see Darryl Woodhouse is in the chat today. Would love to hear his points on it, because actually, if people are suffering from anxiety and all of those other things, and that's essentially overwhelm, what there is mental exhaustion. It's rife, and there's a whole load of characteristics of mental exhaustion which mean that we're less productive, actually pretty numb. So taking care of ourselves is probably the first and foremost thing to do. And so again, would love to share some ideas on that as we move into the discussion today. I did actually look at the last recession. I was interested in the businesses that thrived coming out of the last recession. And interestingly, according to most statistics, happy to share my source, is that it wasn't those that went utterly defensive that won, cutting costs and battening down the hatches. They weren't the ones that won coming out of the recession. It wasn't those that also went totally on the offense, invested in marketing and new systems and, maybe overspent. It was those that got the balance right. It was those that understood where cutting costs without compromising operational efficiency was the right thing to do. And those that also invested on generating new opportunities, new possibilities within the business too. And actually, my business partner, Warren Knight, is a brilliant example of this. We went on a cost-cutting exercise with some of our subscriptions and some of the things that we did. And certainly some of the extravagances, we've certainly much more targeted in where we spent on advertising, etc. But Warren has continued to go on the offense too. And as a result, he's one of the best paid speakers in the marketplace right now, getting gigs in constantly, internationally, albeit virtually, because he's still gone on the offense as well as apply some of the defensive strategies. So there's that balance, which was the thing that came out of the last recession. Another thing is about getting personal. So if people aren't responding to your digital marketing, if they're not opening your emails, if they're not replying to you, and we can assume that they may be going through some of the things that I've just discussed, the anxiety, etc., then maybe the thing that we need to do is actually re-engage with them on a personal level. Maybe we need to pick up the phone and start having conversations. Rather than just relying on Zoom if it's convenient, maybe we schedule to go on a walk-in meeting and have a coffee in a coffee shop and get personal again, because people really need it. We've been working in isolation. If you can demonstrate that care for what maybe your marketplace has been for over the last year and what some of the challenges they may be facing now, I can absolutely assure you're going to be building some really deep personal relationships with them. So getting personal is a big part of that. Pick up the phone. Funnily enough, with Warren and I, we noticed that of all of the people that worked with us on an accelerator last year, 100% of them worked with us as a result of proper conversations face to face, rather than just relying on email. It just didn't work that way. People do actually want to have their hand held. And the last thing was around getting the right support. And so for you, this might mean, more people resourced within the business, but it could actually even mean delegating and finding some outsourced VA to help with some of the processes. But it could also be about the community that you get involved in. And this is one of the things that we think is really important about what we've created with Hivemind. It's about bringing people together to be that support, to be that critical feedback when there are challenges that need to be faced, to be that incubator when there are ideas being presented, just so you're being challenged on those ideas and making sure they're robust and ready for you. So there's a number of things that support really does for you. Of course, you could also join a mastermind group. That's very subtle of me, but I'm going to leave that there. We would, of course, love to get personal with you and talk about masterminding and how it might benefit you moving forwards, but that's not really the point of today's call. Today's call is about how this applies to you. And I've just gone over 10 minutes, but I did really want to make sure I kept to the 10 minutes this week. So what I'd love you all to do now is to switch on your cameras and come and join the conversation and get some feedback on some of the information I've shared and maybe some of the strategies we can collectively embark on in order to make business better for us, our clients, our prospects, our staff, and everybody involved in the business.